What does your porn use really mean about you? Spoiler alert, it does not mean that you're a bad person. It does not mean you're a bad husband or a bad partner. It does mean that you have unmet needs. And I'm not talking just about sexual needs, although that is a piece of it. Your porn use is about so much more than that. So in today's video, I have an amazing guest, Craig Perra. He is an expert and top coach in porn and sex addiction. He's been featured on the Steve Harvey Show, on the Katie Couric Show, on Lifetime TV, and now he is here joining me on YouTube to talk to you about what porn use really means and what steps you can take if porn use is impacting you in a negative way or damaging your relationships. So join me in welcoming Craig, and we'll dive in. All right, well, Craig, let's just jump right in because I was just going through your website and reminding myself of all of your history, and it really is pretty impressive. Right, you've personally coached and helped through your group programs thousands of men. I think you said in 25 countries. Right, all
30.
30 now. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
we count. It's a cool milestone for us. It feels
Yeah.
kind of crazy to know you've touched someone's life so deeply in 30 countries all over the world.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so probably then the other numbers are bigger too, right? More than thousands at this point. You've been on Katie Couric with your wife. You've been an expert on the Steve Harvey Show, and you've also really lived through the experience of sex and porn addiction yourself. So I think you are more than anyone I could really imagine talking to, really uniquely positioned to answer this question of what does someone's porn use mean about them? And I know the men watching my channel, that's the burning question. That's why they clicked on this video. So I'd love to start there, Craig. If a man came up to you and said, okay, yeah, I'm using porn, what does it mean about me? Where do you go?
Oh, well, I want to get really curious because by the time someone has mustered up the courage to ask that question, or in my world, forced to ask that question, it's when they've been exposed. And the compartment that they had, that they tucked this secret away over here, has ruptured.
Mm.
And what they were looking at, who they were talking to, I guess we're just talking about porn here, but that can include, do we include AI girlfriends now in that? Do we include the bots that guys are talking to on OnlyFans? Is that included? So, but I guess the point I wanted to make, they're at a really, really low place. That container's been shattered, and the wonderful thing about that low place is it gives men an opportunity to ask some really important questions about themselves, like, what does this say about me? Um, what does this mean? And the better question is, how do I make this part of my life healthy? How do I make every part of my life healthy so I don't have this compartment? I don't need to meet my needs in secret anymore. I'm master of my domain. I meet them proactively. And that looks different for everybody, but that's the opportunity that this crisis of even asking this question presents.
Well, there's a lot right there, Craig. This idea when you're talking about the container that they've kind of put this aspect of their life in, and now it's been exposed. It sounds to me like there's probably a lot of shame there, right? If somebody's gone to such great lengths to hide this behavior, this aspect of their lives. So, Craig, what do you think most men are afraid their porn use means about them?
Oh, it means they're broken.
Okay.
It means they're deviant, means
Uh,
they're perverts.
okay.
I'm thinking, what are some of the thoughts that come up, when I talk to people on the
Yeah.
phone? It means they're sick.
Mm,
It means they're horny.
yeah.
It means they're lonely, afraid, fear of being judged, fear of being judged. They keep secrets to protect,
Okay.
and they're afraid if they were open about it. Now, no, 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 no. Without judging, what a lot of men realize, that this narrative that we've been fed, that this is normal, This is what everybody does. Men have higher libidos. They jerk off in secret looking at porn. This presents an opportunity for men to look in the mirror and ask themselves, does is that healthy? Is that good for me? Am I watching something produced by someone who cares about my mental health and physical health, my sexual health, or am I being exploited by the cult of beauty and misogyny all rolled into the common porn narrative which exists today?
Oh, interesting. So it almost sounds like there's kind of two camps. Like there's the men who see the fact that they're using porn as a sign that I'm sick, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, and I have to hide that. And then there's another group that says, actually, no, this is normal, but women aren't going to accept it, or my wife isn't going to accept it, or other people will judge me. So they're putting it in that box and hiding it, not necessarily because they think it's a bad thing, but because they're afraid of being judged or rejected for it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the two spectrums in the sexual health space, they're really far apart. On
Okay.
one side, we'll go left, and that's the sex positive community. Those
Okay.
tend to be the academics, the highest educated, kink, poly, trans, very
Okay.
open to all sexualities, which is wonderful. What a beautiful place where that's celebrated. And then on the other side, and the further right you go, the more religious you get, the more sex addiction is the narrative or how this problem would be treated. Over here, maybe they would treat the libido gap. They would treat the shame. And so
Okay.
while there is an element of compulsivity, these folks over here, I think, ask the better questions to help people figure out for themselves, is it healthy? Because I have learned about myself, Rachel, that it's not healthy for me. And when I
Okay.
say it, jerking off the porn, because of where I go, where it takes me.
Mm.
It doesn't move me towards my partner. For me, it
Okay.
moves me away towards isolation, shame,
Uh,
things that really, is this healthy? Well, maybe for somebody, but not for me.
Okay. Craig, could you speak a little more to that? Like, what are the signs? And maybe there's an important first question. Is porn use healthy for anybody?
Mm. Well, the data says that it is.
Okay.
And there have been a number of studies. And, as someone who works in the sex and porn addiction space, it might seem strange talking about the benefits. However, it's not because there are studies and they say these things, and we need to know what are the circumstances of these different categories of people that get benefit from watching other people have sex. So, for example, if I was a repressed homosexual, seeing men connect in an intimate way might bring me value. That might lead me to a discovery of my sexuality.
Okay.
Gay, kink, poly, and there are a few other categories that they've shown that the study said that these groups actually got benefit from pornography, from a connecting perspective, from a sexual health perspective, from learning about themselves perspective. The one
Interesting.
group that has consistently suffered, um,
Okay.
married men.
Uh,
It is
okay.
not helping. It is not making it better. It is not simply plugging that perceived libido gap. It
Okay.
is a source of shame, and it starts like this top of the downward spiral and gets darker and darker. And a lot of reasons why that is, but I like to think about things really, really simply. There's
Yeah.
only so much energy in the tank. There's so
Okay.
much life in that battery. And when that energy from that battery is being directed away from your partner, away from love and connection, um, before we even get to what visuals are there, is that good for you too? Right. And if it's not going there, it's not going towards your relationship. And when it's not going towards your relationship, here the data is clear. Doesn't matter what love language you use, I feel language. say kind things to each other. If the couple's connecting in that way, most of the time, the quality of their relationship is significantly better.
Okay. So
So
it's
when it's
basically,
all going here, it's not going there, and that has
okay,
significant impact.
like I have like this much energy to put towards intimacy, connection, and sex. And if it's going into porn, that's being diverted from my marriage, from my partnership.
Correct. And it's
Okay.
why most of the women, this is a shock for a lot of guys. They get caught, and then their partners say it's cheating. And the guy's first reaction is, "You got to be kidding me!"
Right,
Like,
like,
because part of their narrative often is, "I did this porn, so I
so I
didn't do
wouldn't cheat.
that."
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there is some element of there's truth there. We can't
Okay.
ignore it because it's an uncomfortable truth. Doesn't mean it's not a truth. Um, but the guys, once they kind of come out of that reactive space and start asking questions, well, why do you think it's cheating? Well, I don't think it's healthy. If I was looking at, I don't think it'd be good for me looking at 80 naked guys a day,
Yeah.
bigger than you, stronger than you, healthier than you, more virile than you, more charismatic than you, handsomer than you,
Right.
doing all these things that you can't do over and over again. I don't think that'd be good for me, and I don't think it's good for you because you're not present in the relationship.
Right.
You're not present when we're intimate because it's so hard.
Yeah.
You're off somewhere, and she can feel that, and like that's why I think it's cheating because it's impacting the relationship and impacting you in a significant way. Then the guy goes, "Hmm, we've got a different definition of the word. I'm not going to convince her that hers is wrong. Maybe I should try to understand why she feels that way if I want the relationship to work. Maybe I can learn something in that definition
Okay.
about sexual health, about integrity."
Mm. So, Craig, I want to go down this path because I think there's a lot of value in it, but I know some of the guys watching are wanting us first to address why are they doing it in the first place?
Yeah. They are doing it because it feels good.
Okay.
They are doing it because they're experiencing stress, anxiety,
Okay.
pain. They aren't able to regulate their central nervous system without it. It's a coping strategy,
Okay.
it's a reward, a release, an escape,
Okay.
an oasis.
Mm.
One of my clients said it was like the ring was to Gollum in Lord of the Rings. It became my precious.
Okay.
And I love that because if anyone sees Lord of the Rings, you know how that relationship
Uh,
started and you know how it ended. This gross, disfigured
yeah.
beast, former like Frodo character, turned into this Gollum,
Yeah.
because he was addicted to his precious. So
Yeah.
there's something really important in that when I think when guys stress, anxiety, coping strategy, depression, a salve for the wound, an escape, a release, a reward. It's mine. It's the
Okay.
one thing that I have in a life where I am giving to everybody else to the best of my ability. And it is one place where I get to be free. Watch what I want, do what I want, touch myself the way I want, when I want. It is freedom. Think Mel Gibson, Braveheart, at the, freedom. For some men, that's what it means.
Okay. And Craig, would you speak to, I work with a lot of divorced men, and a lot of my viewers are divorced men or separated men. And it's very common for them to start an email to me with, we haven't been intimate for, and then give me a time period. Sometimes it's 6 months, 2 years, 10 years. And most of these men that I see are incredibly loyal. Right? And they would, like you said, I sacrifice for everybody. I put everybody first. There's nothing for me. And now there's also no sex.
Yeah.
And I have to say, porn use has come up with some of my clients, but I'm sure it's happening a lot more than we're talking about it. And I'm wondering for those guys who are watching who might be like, yeah, okay, but I'm not actually cheating. She hasn't wanted to have sex with me in 3 years. What am I supposed to do here? Do you see that as a driver
Oh,
for use,
well,
or is
and Rachel, what's even that is definitely a driver. But just to note for a second, the poor bastards listening who might be in that
yeah,
relationship, and then they go to a therapist and ask them about their porn use, and all of a sudden they're the identified patient, they're the porn addict. Now we know what the problem is. Now we know what the problem is. One of the significant limitations of the model is that it views a very complicated, multidimensional problem with multidimensional solutions through the very narrow lens of sex and porn.
so you're a porn addict, you're the problem, and now we have to
There's
fix
the reason
you.
why I know why I can't be intimate with you. Now I know why I never felt safe. Now I know why it never felt right. And so it becomes the scapegoat. It
Uh,
becomes a scapegoat. It doesn't mean it wasn't impactful. It is significantly impactful to varying degrees, but it is always the symptom. It is always the symptom. And for most people in traditional sex and porn addiction treatment programs, they're not getting that. They're getting an inflammation of the symptom, a focus on the symptom. And their partner is getting that same distorted
mm,
description of the reason for the problem, his porn addiction.
and
Wait
nobody,
a minute.
okay,
Hey, let's look. How did that start? Where did that come from? Let's have some really honest conversations, like you said, Rachel, about when intimacy
yeah,
fell apart. How might this man who's trying to stay loyal saw this as a solution?
yes, yeah, yeah, as a
And if
way
you
to
don't
keep
hold
the family
space
together.
for that, you are robbing yourself of really a complete solution because you can't ignore that
Yeah.
reality.
Well, and if the porn use is my solution, and you're telling me to stop it, but you're not giving me another solution, like, I don't, this is not my area of expertise, but I work a lot with men who are operating from bad strategies, right? They have
Oh
a
yeah.
they have a way of communicating that's damaging their relationships or frightening their wife or kids or getting them called controlling or narcissist. But if you just tell them they have to change that, but you don't give them a better strategy to solve the problem, they really can't make the change. And I would imagine it's the same with porn use when you're just like, well, stop the porn use, but you completely ignore the problem that the porn use is trying to solve or is a symptom of. How can they make that change?
Well, they can't. They really can't. And what's I hope, maybe one person down this sex addiction funnel is listening right now and saying, wait a minute, there's have I been spending all my clinical time on symptoms? Is my partner spending all of her clinical time on symptoms? And like, let me give you an example, Rachel. I have this is a common one, so I'm not revealing anything. There's like 50 of these I can pull from. Um, Guy comes to me with a long treatment history of sex and porn addiction,
Okay.
inpatient, intensive outpatient, multiple sessions per week, meetings. His partner hasn't done anything structured, clinical with a professional, nothing. And he slipped with the porn. And these folks tend to be religious because it's a sin, and I respect that. The guy slipped with the porn, and I'm talking to the couple, and I said, well, I don't want to get too personal, but what's things like at home? How's the intimacy? Well, we haven't been intimate in 7 years. Wait a minute. 7. And you've been in sex addiction treatment for how long? Well,
Wow.
all 7 of those years. And your partner hasn't gotten any help for the intimacy disorder? Can we call it something else? Can we like what,
Or you as a couple aren't getting help for this?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And that's like that guy's biggest nightmare because in of those 50, 100 stories, it feels like. And I asked him, I said, in your treatment therapy, couples counseling, has anyone ever raised the libido gap? And they
Mm.
say, I don't know what that is. And I said, okay, you may not, it's not, different people use different words, Rachel, right? Have you discussed the reality that your sexual drive leaves you wanting, you want sex twice a day, correct? Right? In a perfect world, you could do twice a day. Yep, twice a day. In you, partner, in a perfect world for you, it's once a month.
Mm.
Fair? Once a month. And we're talking about his porn problem.
Right.
And because Rachel, the safety and the vulnerability and the intimacy, which is completely foreign to us guys. Like, what do you mean responsive desire and sport is supposed to just to work? It doesn't work. It means it's like these are completely foreign concepts, but that's what it takes to, if there's any chance of that relationship surviving, because the gap is so great.
And,
So great.
Craig, how does a couple begin to overcome that? If they're both interested in working on it, like that's a huge gap.
Yeah. Well, it's in my experience, the partners who come to us, Rachel, always have what we call stacked trauma.
Okay.
And listen, and let's face it, let's just look at the porn thing for a second. We've got two groups of people experiencing two very different realities. Here's
Mm.
reality one, the guy perspective. And I'm generalizing here, but generally speaking, we have been doing it since we were kids. We've been hiding it since we were kids. We have been had our own fair of shame around it since we were kids. So
Okay.
you've got that. I'm not saying it's not impactful. I'm not saying it hasn't caused devastation. I'm just talking about that reality. And then you get on the partner side is your oldest and most impactful habit is my deepest wound. It means I'm not good enough. It
Mm.
means you don't love me. And the guy's like, and it's his job to learn why she feels that way.
Okay.
So he can be a better partner, but we've got two people experiencing very, very different realities, and we're not having the right conversations because too many of those conversations are framed through the very narrow lens of sex addiction and porn addiction, which quite frankly is such a teeny tiny part of the problem and a smaller part of the solution. So back to your question, most of the partners come to us with stacked trauma, which means the lens through which they're experiencing that betrayal has been colored, impacted by her own childhood insecurities, not feeling good enough, beauty standards, body insecurity, food issues, and like all of that is wrapped up in their reaction to his porn use. So what we have find works best is when each person embarks on their own healing journey to
Mm.
figure out who they are, how they got here, and who they want to be, and start taking those steps to get there and heal. The partner
Yeah.
treating that pre-existing trauma, the men addressing the lying, compartmentalizing, lack of empathy, poor coping strategies, and low self-esteem, and
Mm.
and then see where things go. And then there's an opportunity for the couple to make the relationship better, which is the only solution really that's going to pull that couple out of misery. Is they have to make it better
Okay.
because it touches everything: communication, sex, shame, family of origin, attachment styles, self-control, purpose, integrity, identity. Like it's all wrapped up into this journey that starts with sex and porn addiction help, whatever they Google that lands them on my doorstep.
Okay. Yeah, they come in saying, okay, I need help with this porn problem. And sounds like your first thing is to be like, this isn't a porn problem.
Well, it's a
So
little
many
trick.
other layers of it.
Yes, it's a little trick, Rachel. So we do start because if I go too early, too hard, I lose people.
Yes. Yep.
What do you mean it's not a porn problem? I have been in therapy for my porn problem for a decade. Do not tell me, don't definitely don't tell my wife it's not a porn problem.
Yeah, my wife is divorcing me because it's a porn problem.
because it's a porn problem. So we gotta tread lightly in the beginning. And so yeah, they put down all the ugly, regurgitate all, what are you doing? What are you looking at? How long? How often? What else are you doing? Put it all on the table.
Okay.
The first exercise that really hits them though is I asked them to tell me about all the good parts of their
Mm.
porn use. And that usually is met with a quizzical face if I'm doing one on one, but on the group, what are you talking about? Like, I does not compute. And then I teach them all behavior is need seeking behavior. This behavior is meeting needs in a really important, powerful way. Here's some examples what other guys did. And they go, oh, it does help me relieve stress, does give me something to look forward to. It does feel like a reward.
Mm.
Man, it does wonders for my anxiety, helps me go to sleep, helps me not bug my wife,
Yeah.
helps me leave her alone. She's tired. We got a new baby,
Mm.
whatever, whatever that story is,
Yeah.
makes me feel really good. And yeah, it is kind of filling a hole. Aha, okay. Now we're talking, filling a hole. Let's so doing that, we'll throughout the program dive into, what hole is it filling? How deep
Yeah.
is it? How dark is it?
Yeah. Where did it originate
Where did
from?
it originate from? That's an interesting place to have a hole in your
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How did you learn to fill it this way? Like,
Right.
yes. Oh, interesting. Oh, correct. That's brilliant. I'm curious, something that's come up in a lot of my conversations with clients recently is this idea that men are really conditioned to suppress a lot of what they feel. And in particular, not to show fear or grief because they'll be a wuss or a sissy or not manly enough or not tough enough. And so if they're not the right kind of man emotionally, they're not going to be desirable to a partner. But then if you get really good at suppressing those emotions, you do have an unmet need for intimacy and connection. And what's come up with a lot of my clients is this idea that sex is one of the only spaces that's kind of acceptable for a manly man to get intimate connection. And so I've been wondering, coming into this call with you, if maybe that's something that plays a factor in porn use or sex addiction. Because if it's not really acceptable or manly to get your intimate needs met through a really vulnerable conversation with your male friends or breaking down emotionally and having a conversation with your wife, but you can have, if the closest you can come to those moments or the only time you get to be in that vulnerable state is through sex, it seems like that might be a driver for staying in that sex addiction behavior, or if sex isn't available, then porn is the closest you can
Yeah.
get to that.
Yeah. No, you when you think about what are acceptable ways for men to express themselves, well, anger is okay.
Yep, that's manly.
Maybe shutting down and flipping someone off and the wall comes up, that's manly, the stoic and sex. And so their vocabulary is stunted because they don't realize how necessary it is to have to be in a relationship built on the S word. This is my favorite S word for clients because I work with big, strong, badass, macho men, some of them, and sometimes I'll start really on. I say, I want you to know that the most important word that I'm gonna utter to you in the next 12 weeks that we're working. Sometimes I do it, Rachel. I'll go out on a limb. I'm gonna be brave.
Okay.
I said the most important word that's gonna come out of my mouth in the next 12 weeks that we're working together is going to be the word safe.
Mm.
Safe. Sometimes I go early on that one. Sometimes I have to, I choose to wait because they're not in a place to really start understanding how dysregulated they are, and meaning how they're getting defensive, getting angry, retorting, always in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn people pleasing spot.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn people pleasing, that's fear. And
Mm.
if that's fear, then that means that's not safe.
Yes.
You don't feel safe. And so with that comes a completely new vocabulary around those emotions and an opening to hmm, vulnerability, at least the data says, is very important. Scary as heck, but okay, and that starts opening up, and then on the the intimacy, the model we use is three-layer cake: safety, vulnerability, and intimacy. Intimacy's got three slices: non-physical, non-sexual,
Okay.
physical, non-sexual, sexual.
Okay.
So the non-physical, non-sexual, that's the one that they're completely oblivious to, and
Yeah.
realize that that is important to look someone in the eye,
Mm.
to have a sweet moment, a smile, a gesture, kindness, an affirmation, a joke.
Yeah.
And when they do that, that 30 to 1, well, he's bet, and I'm just, this is just a hypothetical, Rachel, right? This, everybody's
Sure.
different, but that 30, that libido gap, which was like 30 to 1, well, he's not a nervous wreck basket case like anymore. So that's dropped significantly. And his wife feels safe in the relationship and is, worked on her stuff, and they're putting all these pieces back together,
Mm.
and maybe that couple can find the
Starting to,
right connection and the right way to navigate the gap in a healthy way that works best for them. Because what this does is, if the person's seeing the right provider, because if you're seeing the wrong provider, you're talking about sex and porn addiction.
right.
You
Yeah.
are
And
literally
you're not
playing a
bridging this
different
gap at all.
game, Rachel. You are playing a different game. It's like
Mhm.
crystals. I love crystals. I got crystals everywhere, but I'm not going to rely on anyone to give me my masculine energy. I'm going to use the science to get me there. I'm going to use the data. I'm going to use the tools. I'm going to use what works. And so that's the gift of that crisis of rock bottom, is it
Mhm.
forces, compels, demands of us to do the deeper work, to understand what's really happening behind this, our oldest and most impactful habit, you
Yes.
know.
Um, so, Craig, you've spoken to this on such a deep level, that's really powerful. And I'm going to ask you to bring it back up to the surface just for a second.
Okay,
Um,
let's do it.
if we were, let's imagine we've got a guy here. This is the first time he's heard anybody say anything besides you have a problem and there's something wrong with you. And he's feeling an immense amount of shame and self-judgment. And he really feels like he's broken or doesn't deserve happiness or doesn't deserve love. If you could sum it up really simply for him, what does his porn addiction mean about him?
Yeah, his porn addiction is likely filling that hole of
Okay.
not being good enough, not having value, not having worth. It is the escape from that wound. It is the solve for that wound.
Okay, so it's the solution to that wound.
Correct.
It's not a reflection that that's true.
Oh no!
Because I
Yes,
think that's the shame, right?
excellent.
Is
Well, excellent point, because that is the self-destructive cycle that they're in, because of
yeah.
this reinforcement loop that they are doing something that's in conflict with their morals, with who they want to be, with
I'm
their
a bad
integrity.
person.
I'm
I'm
a
using
bad person.
porn.
They
It
demonized
means,
it.
yeah.
Yep, this is further reinforcement of that. Oh, I got to escape from that. Further reinforcement of that. I got to escape from that. Further reinforcement of that.
And
And
then the
it's a
more I
cycle.
feel like I'm a horrible person, the more I need the porn because it's the thing that kind of is the
Correct.
salve on that wound. But then the self-judgment, and now I'm just in this never-ending
Correct.
spiral.
And the worst, the lowest is for people who's, when they're when that innate sense of not being good enough, the triple whammy is for those people who that becomes that becomes part of their sexual imprint. So now they're being sissified. They're being they get off on being demeaned. These are the guys who pay women to insult them, who pay women to take advantage of them, and this ain't kink shaming. Whatever you do, if it makes you happy, rock on, listeners. I'm talking about the people who is making them feel like absolute garbage, and they're feeling worse about themselves after these experiences. They're not feeling better about themselves. So that's like worst case is when that um innate sense of not being good enough gets wrapped up into the sexuality.
Mm.
Maybe a man who might be naturally submissive but was never trained to see that as masculine.
Yeah.
Being true to yourself is masculine. He didn't learn that, so he shamed it, and then it got wrapped up with the sexuality, and
And
he's
now it's this
not gonna.
never ending.
Yeah,
Okay. And the shift that can set them free from that cycle is realizing that the porn use or the sex addiction is a symptom trying to meet that need, not a reflection of who they are.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's two paths, because while the behavior is the symptom, from our guy perspective, we are talking about one of the most powerful forces in human nature,
Yeah.
the male reproductive drive, in terms of how it's wired into our biology and what we know about other mammals. We're talking about, the according to one scientist, Darwin says it's
Yes, it's
all of the
the
significance as a creature, all the plumes and the feathers is to do that. So recognizing it is this incredibly powerful force, and with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm.
And this is an opportunity for us to honor that responsibility. And quite frankly, I want to shift the conversation from, is he a sex addict? Is he not a sex addict? Because it doesn't matter. Is it healthy? Healthy, unhealthy. Those are the two buckets I want people listening to start thinking about this, because it's so nuanced, and this is okay, that's not okay, this is fine, that's not fine. Healthy. Is
Okay.
this healthy? Is this good for me? When I eat an apple, I know I ate something healthy.
Yeah.
When you eat that, when you consume that, is it healthy?
Yeah. Is it a piece of chocolate cake or is it an apple?
Yeah. Or is it, a chocolate cake? And you can say, hey, occasionally having a piece of chocolate cake is an important part of anyone's diet. But is it chocolate cake or is it crystal meth?
Mm. Okay.
Because of what you're watching, how you feel about yourself when you're watching, how you feel about yourself after watching.
Mm. And so that
So,
mindfulness, right, that self-awareness of being able to observe the impact that what you're doing is having on you is an important part of being able to know what's healthy for you or not. Right.
so important. Just being present. Is this good for me? And that's tough for us guys. We all have ADD, ADHD. Everybody who comes in, you assume, there's some level of attention deficit challenges, mind bouncing all over the place. And that mindfulness is, it's my company is the Mindful Habit, because I knew mindfulness was important, and I knew habits were important, and I felt those were the two most important things that I wanted to focus on. And I said, I'm just going to put it in the name. Mindful
This is
Habit.
what we need to do.
Yeah. And looking back 13 years, that's a pretty good one. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, you were right on point with it.
Yeah.
Um, Craig, earlier you had mentioned the impact of the visuals of porn. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. If you go back a few generations, our ancestors saw in their lifetime maybe a few naked women,
Okay.
and maybe a few more naked men. Now, most boys see thousands times that by the time they're 11 years old.
Mm. Wow.
And not only are they watching, when we define this word, we say porn, well, different people, different visuals pop up in their heads for
Sure.
different people. And there was a recent study done, and they took the titles and the subject matter and the content of each of the videos on the homepage of the major tube sites.
Okay.
And at the end of that study, 87% of them depicted violence against women, choking, slapping, um, clearly uncomfortable, abusive, domineering, misogynistic content.
Okay.
So, the visual, okay, two people having sex, there's that, but what are you watching? Where
Mm,
is this taking you? And
right.
for a lot of people throughout humanity, you never could have gone to that place.
Mm,
You never would end up down this road ever. And now you're obsessed with it. And now you can't stop. And now you're watching things that, you know, when you snap out of it, you realize, listen, for those people who want to go do it, do whatever, this isn't judgment. This is saying what's healthy. And a
yeah.
lot of these guys realize, like, oh, no, that's not healthy. I don't want to do that in my real life. No, 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 no. And is the fantasy harmless? More and more people now than ever before are saying, no, it's not. It's not harmless. It's sucking my soul out of me.
Mm. Um, yeah, it is when you put it that way, it's just a distinction between what we used to see, right? And even if we were to see sex or other people having sex, it would be normal, pretty normal sex. But now you're on these porn sites and it's really so far from what most of us would experience in our normal sex lives. But then it,
And it is already creeped into real life. In a study of women 18 to 25 in the United Kingdom, 40% of them during intimacy without consent were choked, slapped, gagged, hit, spit on. That
wow,
is up 40% in 5 years.
40%. Holy smokes.
Where do you think they learned that?
Wow. Craig, there's another question mark in my mind about the visual piece. I've worked with quite a few men who have a lot of insecurity about their own bodies, about their penises more than anything, whether it's size, shape, or function. And it's been really eye-opening to me to see the intensity, the degree of the shame
Mm,
the self-loathing or self-judgment connected to that judgment of their body. Um, do you think that's connected at all to what's just out there, what we're seeing all the time in porn?
it's sometimes, Rachel, I feel like am I too dramatic? Because every time you say something, I say, oh my God, that is destroying people's lives and
Yeah.
impacting them in a significant way. But everything you said is impacting people in a massively significant way. So the answer to your question is yes. And penis pump sales are up. The
Mm.
pills to grow your penis, which none of them work, are up. These are hot niche affiliate markets to get into, Rachel. If you Because I follow this stuff, and
Yeah.
we wanted to advertise on one of these sites honestly and ethically and give people a
Oh,
decent
wow.
message. And all we know is that the ED supplement market, the penis enlargement market, billions of dollars.
And
So
I've
that
just
insecurity is now infecting us men.
and I didn't I was like, yeah, I'm sure that's an issue, and I know women have it too with we're supposed to have bigger boobs and be skinnier and all of that. But I've been really floored by how like profound the impact is. Like to the point of suicide around the size, shape, or function of this body part. So it's been the last few years has just been kind of shocking to me to see how deeply some men are suffering because of that. Uh,
It's I've had the incredible privilege of working with men who have had their prostate removed. And as
okay.
soon as that surgery happens, the suicide rate is
Wow.
significantly high. I don't remember the exact statistic, but 4 times higher. It's a very, very high number because of the identity wrapped up in performance and size.
Oh my
And when
gosh.
you've got everybody watching these videos with men wielding these clubs,
Yeah.
and the advertisements that they're seeing, we know, talk about a market that knows the click. Many of our
Oh yeah.
technologies come from porn. What are they seeing? It's too small. It's too small. What are they watching? You're not good enough.
No
And
one's gonna want
so
you. You won't be loved. You'll be rejected,
you will
ridiculed.
be rejected. But not if you do this.
Ugh, so brutal.
And so there's this perfect storm that is feels like brewing around men, and
Yeah.
it's a little scary on one hand. On the other, I have hope
Mhm.
because never in the history of mankind have there been more people talking about it. And
Yeah.
the problem is you talked about that manosphere, of empowerment. Guys don't get sucked into that because they want to be bad people,
No.
because they want to have autonomy in their lives and they want someone who's going to push them and motivate them. And those dogs are barking the loudest. They're so stupid, Rachel. They don't even understand the whole alpha thing. They're completely wrong about that. The
I
guy
know.
who wrote the study says, you don't even understand that.
I know. I
The
know. But it's
alpha has
so, but when you
compassion.
but when you don't feel significant,
That's right.
that rhetoric is so compelling because they're saying, well, here's how to do it. You just have to do this. Um, Craig, we have about 10 minutes. I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on tantric techniques? Is that something that you have
Well,
experience with?
I've heard I've read about it, and I know clients have gotten really deep into it. And I certainly direct clients who are interested, in that, with their partner.
Okay.
Um, Being a yogi myself, I kind of curious to learn more about it,
Yeah.
but not an area that I specialize in, but I know a lot of people have gotten joy understanding some of those principles. And yeah, I'd love to, yeah, tell me the premise of the question. Is it something that you're familiar with?
Not that much. It's something my husband and I both saw this body worker last year who was really helpful for me. I've known about how our nervous system stores trauma and it gets stored in muscle tension and it can manifest in these physical ways, but I'd never really felt that physical piece um,
Mm,
as strongly until I worked with this particular body worker and just certain changes and things that I thought I'd worked on. And then I was like, oh, wow, like I haven't worked on this. And one of the things that he recommended to us was that we explore tantric techniques. And so I would like to do more with it too, but it's really, it's so much about relaxation
yeah,
and space and time and being intimate in just a very different way. Like you spoke earlier about how the spouse can tell if he's mentally not present during sex.
yeah,
Right? Like if he's thinking about whatever porn scene, she can feel that. And a lot of what I learned in the tantric was that it's very much about that can we be present together intimately, whether it's and in both boxes, the sexual intimacy, but also the physical touch without sex. And it's really a mindful practice. My
yeah,
understanding is it's a mindfulness practice that you do together, but it's very it feels very restorative on a nervous system level to me. Uh,
yeah.
and
Well, count
I've
me in. I'm going to learn more about it.
um, when I've encountered the clients who have a lot of the shame around penis size, shape, performance, that keeps coming up to me as I think this would be a really, if they felt safe enough to practice it with their partner, I think that approach could be helpful, but I don't know enough about it. So I was mostly curious if you
Well,
had.
I think your instincts are spot on. That absolutely can be helpful because it'll help them be better lovers. It'll help them separate from the only pleasure is penis and vagina pleasure. Nothing else exists
Yeah,
beyond that. And that is simply not true.
yeah,
And so things like tantric and some of the work we do, maybe we'd call it early stage tantric. But
yeah.
for guys, getting comfortable around touch
Mm,
is, especially if someone had physical abuse in his childhood and
Sexual abuse.
sexual abuse, yeah, any of the abuses,
Yeah.
but even without that, men aren't trained to touch and to and often their reactions are, a lot of fear, in soft, gentle touch. So anything that's gonna, put a couple onto, and a person onto a more holistic experience of sexuality beyond what you're seeing in porn, um, I'm all for it.
Hmm. Um, Craig, is there in the next 5 minutes or so, what have we not looked at yet that you
Mm,
think is important for the man who clicked on this because he wanted to know what porn use really meant about him?
yes.
What have we not said that he needs to hear?
The act of you clicking says you want to learn more about yourself. I think, someone asked me this, okay, if you had to say, like, what is the most important thing?
Okay.
I'm thinking of a segment on my podcast, the most important thing, because everyone's answers that question differently, and there's inherent challenges, and there's never going to be the right answer. And no matter
Yeah.
how trained you are, you're never going to answer it perfectly. So all that comes up with this answer, right? And so mine is lead your parts. Lead your parts. And that is the simplest, most
Yeah.
distilled way that I have to introduce the concept of parts work, which I think is the future gold standard of so many different therapeutic models.
I agree.
And it's because it's rooted in the human experience of, God, when I got angry, it did feel like a part of me took over. Or when I was alone, really upset with my wife, and she called me and hung up on me, and I got triggered to watch porn, it felt like a part of me took over.
Mm.
And what the parts work teaches you is that number one, there are no bad parts, no
Mm.
bad habits from a neuroscience perspective. That means nothing. Bad outcomes, good outcomes, yes, but no bad parts, no bad habits. And these parts are meeting needs the way they were trained to meet needs,
Mm.
our experience, our biology. And so, what that does, Rachel, is especially for guys, it puts all that family of origin work that they spent 2 decades on in their therapist in a container of
Mm.
the
This
addict
part.
part, the liar, sabotage, anger, shutdown, defensive, all trained conditioned responses like the superheroes or the supervillains, this team of protectors. And I help them go from the hall of supervillains to the hall of justice, where these protectors, because they don't die, anybody who's been in mental health or life knows, shit, those moments are
They're
going to
not going
come.
away.
You learn how to lead these parts. And that, I think, is the most important thing that I can say.
Mm. Oh, Craig, I'm so glad that you went there because I agree with you that I've never seen anything as powerful as helping somebody. I often use the word ally apart, but I like how you just said it to lead the parts because you do. You have to, if you're not leading them, they're leading you, um,
Yes.
and that's
Well,
real.
you've got this natural human experience, so happens to be perfectly aligned with the way we understand the mind, how the mind works. And we do have these different aspects of our psychology. It's called the modular mind theory. And in a very basic level, external stimuli, I'm going to respond. That part is, I got this.
I'm taking over.
I got this. My turn. What do you mean? Where am I going? Like the fancy executive businessman cracks under pressure because his wife asked him, "Where's he going?" So the defensive part, he's ready. He's ready to protect. He's doing a job. But like their employees need to be retrained, their parts need to be retrained. And that's the beauty of the parts work. It gives so many things, but a framework that they naturally connect with because they're leaders in various capacities. They've got direct reports. Well, guess what? Here are your direct reports. They don't go away. You better learn to lead them. And was one
Mm.
of the most powerful realization that these parts aren't bad. They're meeting needs the way they were trained to meet needs.
Yeah, and they're not going somewhere anywhere, so I better learn how to live with them, lead them.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
Craig, how can people work with you?
Sure. Well, they can visit my website, mindfulhabithelp.com.
Perfect.
And there's a phone number there. They can call that number and get on my calendar. They can also check out my podcast, Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I have a Mindful Habit YouTube channel, and the website will direct anybody to wherever they need to go. They can look at my different programs and how I help people and learn more about me.
Amazing. And Craig, I'll make sure all those links go in the description for this video too. So anybody watching, you can find all of those details for Craig below this video. Craig, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking about this. It's such, I think, an important and under-discussed topic.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll leave your men with this. Your sexual energy is powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Craig.
You're welcome.